I have tried to tell you folks, and this is the second half, we're talking about Eustace Mullins. We're talking about the changes on my website, and this article I'm reading to you right now, sharing with you right now, was written by my friend, Eustace Mullins, who spoke at my events, who appeared in my magazine all the time, who tried to tell you the truth about the Federal Reserve, who tried to tell you the truth about the war with Germany. And they finally killed him. They finally wore him down. And this is history. We're not fudging anything. The victors write the history. The Jews declared war on Germany. They conquered them. The Jews declared war on the Russian people, on the Tsar, and all of his people, and everybody that was loyal to the Tsar. And they killed 60 million white Christian Russians. They will do it here. This is the reason we have to talk about the Jews. This is why they don't want it, because they're scared. They're scared. They know, we know what they have done. And I know that we are in a war. Always have been. Always. Maybe for thousands of years. The Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Babylonian Empire. The Babylonian Empire reborn now as the New World Order. This is all happening right now, folks. This is not me and I'm making a conspiracy theory. I'm reading from you what a Jew wrote. I'm telling you what one Jew told another Jew. Rockefeller, Nicholas Rockefeller, told Aaron Russo, yeah, we're going to chip everybody. We're going to chip everybody. And yeah, our history, David, you're right. Our history does go back further. But the worldwide boycott by the Jews against Germany, organized in 1933, had immediate effect. Such boycotts are illegal in the United States. Nevertheless, the Jews, operating with complete freedom under Roosevelt's New Deal, or Jew Deal, as it was known to many Americans, conducted their illegal boycott, openly advertising the fact that they were in criminal restraint of trade. They carried on a national campaign of terrorism against anyone who dared handle German goods. Since 40% of Americans were of German origin, one might suppose they would have little effect, but most of the German descendants joined in the boycott, hoping to prove they were good Americans, operating on a multi-million-dollar budget. The non-sectarian anti-Nazi League put forth a flood publication from their headquarters in New York City. One such, The Idealist, in 1937, carried a front-page list of merchants who were still handling German goods. These were small shops, as the large firms had long since yielded to the vicious Jewish oppressor that had agreed to boycott Germany. Another paper, the Anti-Nazi Bulletin, posted in February 1939 that Germany would be brought to her knees by the worldwide Jewish boycott. It stated editorially, the boycott is the solution. Its effect is inexorable and inevitable as the march of time. A few months later, the German armies stood unchallenged as the masters of Europe, but the Jews could afford to wait. Many Americans were horrified by the hate campaign of the Jews, realizing the Jews were determined to use American youth in their war against Germany. One who dared oppose them was America's greatest living hero, Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh's father, a congressman during World War I, had his home broken into by federal agents, his books burned because he spoke out against the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act. In 1932, the Jews backing Roosevelt's campaign were terrified that Charles Lindbergh might decide to seek the office of president. Should this handsome blonde hero, the most famous man in America, decide to run, the misshapen Roosevelt, crouching in his wheelchair, would not stand a chance. In March of 1932, Lindbergh's baby son was kidnapped and killed by ritual murder. The sorrowing Lindbergh withdrew from public life, and Roosevelt's campaign was secured. Years later, a German carpenter, Gerhard Hauptmann, was electrocuted for the murder. A recent book proves that the FBI fabricated the evidence which sent him to the electric chair as a vital part of the Jews Hate Germany campaign. Another book proves that the Jews set fire to the Zeppelin Hindenburg in New Jersey, a few miles from the scene of the Lindbergh murder, which was touring here on a goodwill mission from Germany. Knowing that the Jews intended to use American boys as cannon fodder to attack the non-Jewish government of Germany, Charles Lindbergh became the leader of the America First movement, the Jews launched a national smear campaign against him, which continues to this day. During World War II, the Jews refused to allow him to serve as a commissioned officer in the armed forces, but he flew many missions as a civilian observer in the Pacific. Few Americans today recall the unpleasant aspects of life during World War II. Black markets flourished as Jews made billions of dollars in profits from the illegal sale of sugar, gasoline, and other commodities. At the same time, they instituted tight rationing on white Americans as demanded that they inform on each other when an extra pound of butter appeared. Hordes of Jews and their mafia allies counterfeited millions of rationing stamps and plowed their profits into urban real estate. Successful in their boycott of the Jews, successful in their boycott and war against Germany, the Jews confidently proceeded with their plans to exterminate the entire German people. In 1941, Theodor Kaufmann wrote, "In Germany must perish. To achieve the purpose of German extinction, it would be necessary to only sterilize some 48 million of them." And folks, do you think that might be what they're doing with the chemtrails, with the drop in our testosterone, or with the failure of our sperm counts? Yeah, I think that might have anything to do with the genetically modified foods that the Monsanto, that the corporations that sprung up around the banks, as Thomas Jefferson warned you about, would do. Now, Henry Morgenthau, whose father had made millions of dollars by turning pleasant New York area of Harlem into a vast black slum, preceded Roosevelt to adopt his Morgenthau plan for exterminating the Germans. His assistant, the Lithuanian Jew and Soviet agent Harry Dexter White, succeeded in dismantling hundreds of Germany's factories and shipping them to Russia, where they rested for years on railroad sidings because the Russians did not know how to reassemble them. During this time, Germans have built new factories, which forced the economies of the Jewish allies, England and France, towards bankruptcy. The British writer George Orwell, horrified by the total control which Jewish society exercised over every aspect of the members of the Jewish community, wrote a book warning that Jewish society might someday extend its dictatorship over all people. He called his book 1984, and it became a bestseller, but to this day, no one has ever revealed it was a case study of Jewish dictatorship. Many naive Gentiles support the establishment of the State of Israel, which was founded on the horrors of such a terrorist act as the bombing of the King David Hotel and the murder of the United Nations observer Count Folk Bernadotte, because they supposed that all Jews would be exterminated there, that all the Jews would be exterminated there to live, would immigrate there to live. They knew nothing of the phenomena of biological parasitism, or that the Jews had no intentions of voluntarily giving up their insisted positions in the Western civilization. Anti-Jewish sentiment has been a hallmark of Western culture and has usually been found only in the most advanced centers of our society, such as Vienna, where Hitler first started the Jewish problem, in London and Paris. The greatest thinkers, such as Lothrop Stoddard and Houston Stewart Chamberlain, warned us of the Jewish peril, while the Jews hired the most craven and diseased politicians in the Western nations, such as Roosevelt and Churchill, to advance their cause. During World War II, the brilliant Virginian Lady Astor was present at a wartime meeting of Churchill and Roosevelt and remarked to her companions, "Okay, we're out of time." And do that, folks. You also go to freeamerican.com, read this story by Eustace Mullins, and read my article, "This is Why We Have to Do This." All right. Let me get here and take this off. Thanks for listening. Freeman.com. The show will be up. But I have a little bit more, and I've only got 10 minutes left here, so I'm going to continue to share this with you. This thing here. Get that one closed. Get that one done. Okay. This is why we can't just allow them to force us not to talk about Jews. We can't do this, folks. If we do, you're signing up to walk into a prison. That's what's happening. I'm sorry. Lady Astor at a meeting at Church on Roosevelt. Look at those two great human materials. Franklin hates anyone who can walk, and Winston hates anyone who is server. While the Jewish-dominated powers have lamely defended Israel's continued acts of aggression and genocide against the Arab people, other nations have demanded she be brought to account. Now, let's give you a little bit more information. The Jews intensified after Lady Astor was under attack. The Jews intensified their worldwide propaganda campaign to defend their atrocities. They brought off a masterstroke when they placed a Jew in New York as the head of all Arab propaganda activities in the United States. Of course, the American people remained uninformed about the Arab cause after this new treachery. Nevertheless, worldwide feeling against the Jews continued to mount. A new masterstroke of propaganda was needed. The Jews achieved this by their ancient techniques of claiming that their opponents were guilty of the very atrocities that the Jews were committing. This is what they have done over and over again to me. Oh, he's starting a terrorist organization. You're the terrorist. You and the BATF are the terrorists. You and the CIA are the drug dealers. Now there's people that are smoking on doom. You know, ain't gonna happen. Founded on terrorism, the State of Israel now became the secret organizer of an anti-Israeli, the Palestine Liberation Organization. One, Yasser Arafat, whose mother was Jewish, became the head of the greatest Jewish hoax in history. Nevertheless, the PLO was responsible for the survival of Israel, as each attack by the PLO has resulted in new worldwide sympathy and support for Israel. The Israelis, the Jews, made a comment, and it's in my book, Mystery Babylon, that that they loved anti-Semitism. They loved it. They tried to create it. And by the way, this whole history of Israel and how the Rothschild set it up is in my book, Mystery Babylon, that they don't want you to. Each PLO attack came just at the moment when demands that Israel return to its 1948 borders reached a crescendo, and after the attack, the demands against Israel have been hushed. This is why they have to try to paint me as anti-Semitic. Why? Because I started the militias. Why? Because I was organizing Americans. Why? Because they don't want that. For years, Jewish insiders. Now, thousands of young Arabs were persuaded to join the PLO under the delusion they would strike at the enemy, and instead they were sent out to be slaughtered. For years, this is what's happening to our soldiers right now. For years, Jewish insiders have joked about these nightly turkey shoots as Israelis leisurely shot down the PLO infiltrators whose exact route, number, and armaments had been radioed to the Jews even before the terrorists had left their base. The turkey shoots became popular Israeli sport, and high-ranking officials such as Moshe Dayan took part in picking off the terrorists. On one occasion, a very high-ranking State Department was allowed to pick off his own turkey, a 17-year-old Arab youth. On necessary occasions to stifle foreign critics, the Jews were allowed a few of the infiltrators to proceed to some small Israeli village where they shot a few Jews before being killed. The Jews also ordered the murder of 2 State Department officials in the Sudan to excite Americans against the Arabs. The greatest propaganda stroke of the Jewish-directed PLO was the massacre of Israeli athletes at the Olympic Games in Munich. Yasser was invited to speak at the United Nations, where he stood brandishing a gun. He was repeatedly interviewed by the Jewish program, 60 Minutes, where his interview, Mike Wallace, showed no discomfort being in the presence of the most dangerous Jew killer in the world. Colonel Edward Eugene Sanctuary told me in 1952 to find out who the Jews have in their pocket, merely observe to which of their enemies they give the most publicity. Their true enemies will get the silent treatment. That's the difference between Clay Douglas and Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a success. You can read him, you can hear his thing, because he never talks about the Jews. That's what happens. And that's why I'm demonized. That's why, I'm sorry. This is history. This is history. This is up on my website. This is what is happening. This is what they're planning on doing. I've told you the truth all along. I've told you about Colonel John Brinkerhoff, and if this guy ain't Jewish, I'll kiss your ass. He's lecturing law enforcement. In case you were single outbreak, a smallpox, in a major metropolitan area, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people. Well, guess what, folks? I've got that, and I've got that signed for you here. The true face agreement. Can't afford a label, but I made this almost 10 years ago. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting. It's one of the most important films out there. Nobody wants to handle it. Everybody's afraid of it. Nobody wants to talk to it. You need to get it. Order it today. Make a donation today. I'll send it to you. It's autographed. It's signed. You can help just by keeping a voice out there, because I'm the one person that will talk about the Jews. They send all these trolls like this Jewish prick Kachi, who just wants to disrupt. Well, I know this, and I know this, and I know this. Like that. I've got all this wisdom. Why don't you want to listen to his? If you listen to my wisdom, you never have to listen to Clay Douglas. That's the crew. That's what they do. Now, Alex Jones gets all the publicity. He's the one who gets interviewed, but they won't have me on. Now, Arab leaders were kept busy denying any connection with the PLO, making them seem even more disunited than before. It was obvious, and they're doing the same thing to the Patriot movement here, the Tea Party meetings, the Occupy meetings. They've taken it over, and the only thing you remember about the Occupy meeting was some guy taking a shit on a police car. You know, the only thing you know about Mexicans is you saw a bunch of them standing on an American flag. You know, the NAFTA is what caused the alien invasion up here. This Hegelian dialectic at work. They want you to hate the Mexicans because they want you shooting the Mexicans. They want the Mexicans shooting you. They want to do that. And they've been successful at that. 50,000 Americans have been murdered by illegal aliens in this country since 9/11. But let's go back a little bit. What is Eustace Mullins' take on this? The outrages committed by the PLO, or sovereign, or the militia, were particularly useful to the craven politicians in the United States because it gave the cover of humanitarianism to their acts of high treason in support of Israel and against the interest of the American people. The greatest hoax of the Jews was the creation of OPEC, the cartel of oil-producing nations. OPEC was not an Arab creation at all, but the brainchild of two Jews from Venezuela who conceived the idea of persuading the Arabs to triple the price of their oil. The Arabs were skeptical of Jews bearing gifts. They had no real need for increased revenues. However, the Arab world is one of startling paradoxes as the Arab nations, which had loudmouthed the Communist Party, was being supplied with arms by the Soviet Union. The Arabs finally agreed, and Western democracies were thrown into economic chaos. While $50 billion of their capital funds flowed into Arab banks, it should surprise no one that most of the money had wound up in the Jewish hands. There was one important exception, the Arab Bank in Beirut, Lebanon. It was imperative to the well-being of the Jewish financial empire that these Arab banks be destroyed. Southern Lebanon was the site for many Palestinian refugee camps and the staging area for PLO raids into Israel. After each of these abortive raids, Israeli planes attacked the refugee camps, killed many women and children. The world remained silent in the face of these atrocities. King Hussein of Jordan, who was married to a British Secret Service agent, had already mounted a terrible attack against the refugees. In February 18th of 1877, Bob Woodward of Watergate fame revealed in the Washington Post that since 1957, the CIA had privately paid King Hussein $1 million a year for his private life with sports cars and planes, while furnishing him with blonde prostitutes from London and New York. Now, in addition, was $200 million a year, which the United States gave Jordan in aid. In return, Hussein acted as an agent of the Jews, furnishing intelligence information against other Arab leaders. This 20-year-old story was considered a great scoop. King Faisal, who opposed further OPEC increases, was assassinated. Suddenly, violent civil war broke out in Lebanon between the dominant Christian right-wing party, which was controlled by the CIA, and the Jews and the Muslims, who were considered left-wing. The PLO apparently was in the middle, being attacked by both sides. Their refugee camps were wiped out with terrible atrocities being committed against helpless inhabitants. Think FEMA camps here. The Arab banks in Beirut were blown up and burned during the many months of the Civil War. None of the hundreds of correspondents in the area could offer an explanation of what the fighting was about, who was financing, what the goals were, or any other details. Meanwhile, the state of Israel basked in peace and security as the Arabs massacred each other. In the United States, congressional investigation of the CIA came to a screeching halt when it was on the verge of exposing the CIA setting up a civil war in Lebanon. Also, folks, I've gotten in my book, Mystery Babylon, I exposed the whole CIA, Mossad drug dealing operation, running the drugs through George Bush's Apollo oil platforms, through Bill Clinton's Sabina, Arkansas, through Manuel Noriega's Panama. Folks, this is what's happening now. They're bringing the drug. And I wrote books about this 40 years ago. Those will be coming out if we've got a little bit of support. If you can break the mind lock they have on you and start supporting the free American, rather than buying into this Jewish lie bullshit. Oh, Clay's an informer. Oh, Clay's he smokes pot. Oh, Clay's gay. Oh, Clay's he's an anti-Semite. Oh, Clay's protecting child molester. Oh, come on, folks. Use a little bit of common sense. I have never told you anything that's wrong. Wouldn't allow my children. Two things I won't back you up on. I won't back up a liar. I won't back up. And I don't hate you for religion. And they don't hate us for our freedom. This is a way to get you to fight with each other, to get you to go against your fellow Americans, rather than saying, show your small pot. I've heard that's pretty good. Yeah, I can agree with you there, David. I don't want to be president. You want to be president? You can be president. I want to take over the whole new world order and run it for the people, like it always should have been, like Jesus would have done. Okay. Now, the Jews continued their boycotts in the CIA while howling about a non-existent Arab boycott of U.S. firms which supported Israel. Since all U.S. foreign firms contributed to Israel, both directly and indirectly, such a boycott could not exist. While Mexico supported a UN resolution that Zionism is racism, the Jews lost. When Mexico supported a resolution that Zionism is racism, the Jews launched a boycott of Mexican hotels, which was later called off when they realized most of the hotel and restaurants affected were owned by Jews. As an astute student of the Roosevelt Road-powered Jimmy Carter knew that from 1933 to 1941, all of Roosevelt's social programs were disastrous farces. Since he planned to remain in power for 4 terms, repealing the limitation on presidential service, he drew up war plans which he believed would take him down Roosevelt's successful power play in 1941 and into foreign war. However, Carter did not have 8 years to fumble with social programs, and as he was elected only by Ford's moronic decision to debate him and by Jack Anderson's smear of Howard Baker's wife as an alcoholic, panicking the Neanderthal Ford into choosing Dole and losing the southern states. Baker would have brought in Carter's advisor, told him he should have 20% inflation and a war plan should be instituted by that date. The Chief of Staff gave him 2 areas where Russia would allow him to go without precipitating World War III, South Africa and the Middle East. His black advisor, Andrew Young, insisted we go into South Africa and destroy the white governments of Rhodesia and South Africa, but his Jewish advisors prevailed with their final solution to the Arab problem. The American Army will impose a pax judica on the Middle East, controlling or deposing as many Arab governments as possible and taking their oil fields as they have now done in Iraq, a move which was very popular with the American public. Russia has been given a great deal of influence in Iran as the price of keeping hands off and will likely has been, and the United States will gain control over Afghanistan and Pakistan at a later date. They will cause as much strife in Iran as they can to keep that country from playing a major role in their plans. Having wiped out the last vestiges of opposition in the Middle East, the Jews can turn to their final task, eliminating their last opponents, the recalcitrant white minority of the United States. A successful campaign to swamp them with non-whites has resulted in more than 30 million Mexican and other non-whites being imported into the United States. The Jew is trying to destroy the moral fiber of the remaining whites through drugs, pornography, and public loiterers. These vices have no effects on non-whites as they comprise their normal way of life. Many years of struggle lay ahead. The bones of our dead are crying out for revenge. Our ancient thirst for justice and for the triumphs of our nation will be reenacted in solemn rituals over the graves of our enemies. America victorious. And that Eustace Mullins story came from the Christian Defense League. I am Clay Douglas. My book, Mystery Babylon, is available in a number of places, or you can get it by calling me. Folks, my phone number